Hey guys, thanks for tuning in to another video on ForgottenWeapons.com. I'm Ian McCollum, and I'm here today at the IRCGN, the Central Ballistics Laboratory of the French Gendarmerie, where we are taking a look at some of the particularly rare and interesting firearms in their reference collection. Specifically today, we have the civilian version of the VSS-M Vintorez. This is Russia's first special purpose 9x39 millimeter integrally suppressed semi-automatic rifle. And what's interesting is they had two variations on this gun. They had the AS Val and they had the VSS Vintorez. They look similar. The Vintorez has this Dragunov style stock on it, and it was the sniper weapon. VSS well, the VS stands for essentially a special sniper rifle. The AS Val, and Vintorez, by the way, it means apparently like tap or screw. It seems it's a weird thing to name the gun after. Maybe I've got the translation a bit wrong, but the AS Val was the assault rifle version. It had a folding wire stock. It had a separated pistol grip, and it was intended, well, more in the assault rifle role for more sustained fire. It is the, well, AS, just like AK, it's an assault rifle, and Val means avalanche, which makes more sense to me as a thing to name a gun after. Now, the actual actions of the two guns are identical. The VSS Vintorez was given a higher quality barrel. It was intended for more accurate sniper fire instead of higher volume sustained fire. Really, it is a little bit odd that they issued both versions. Now, these guns were developed specifically for, well, they were developed to replace simply a suppressed AK. So prior to this, if you wanted a silenced weapon in the Russian military, you would get an AK with a PBS-1 suppressor and subsonic ammunition and a replacement rear sight that allowed you to zero for subsonic ammunition. And once these were introduced, they went primarily to special operations, counter-terrorist, very elite units. And the idea was, if you're in that sort of unit, you're typically going to have a mission that's something like, you're going to go to a place, you're going to shoot some terrorists who have taken hostages or done something like that, and then you're going to go back to base. And a weapon like this, which, by the way, will overheat really fairly quickly under sustained fire and become difficult to use, and, of course, has a limited range because it's a subsonic cartridge, this rifle is great for that operation, but it's not so great if you actually run the chance of being out, say, on foot patrol in the middle of a war and getting into a sustained gun battle with a regular enemy unit. Now, the guys who, say, typical recon units who might get into that sort of gunfight, they continued to use suppressed AKs, because if they did need full combat firepower, they could take the suppressor off, change magazine from subsonic ammo to regular standard ball, and presto, you've got a standard issue AK service rifle, and you can have a sustained gunfight with it. So through the early 2000s or through the mid 2000s, these were primarily used by groups like the NKVD under the Soviet Union, the FSB under the Russian Federation, Alpha, Spetsnaz. Those are the sorts of guys who got these guns. Now, these have been now made for civilian sale and export, and we are looking at a civilian pattern here. So let's go ahead and take a closer look at it. And more importantly, let me show you how this is not a Kalashnikov. I think a lot of people expect, like, oh, it's a Russian gun with a charging handle and the little dog-leg safety lever, it must be a Kalashnikov. It is far from it. It's actually closer to a VZ-58 almost. Today's video is brought to you by History of Weapons and War, with over 4,000 videos already online from 8 different creators and new content being uploaded every single day. History of Weapons and War is your premium best place for streaming historical, educational firearms content. Available on the web through iOS, Android OS, Roku, and Amazon Fire TV. It's available on all the major streaming platforms. And right now, in celebration of Christmas 2023, History of Weapons and War is offering 20% off annual subscriptions. You always get a free week trial when you sign up, but right now, if you use the code XMAS23 at sign up for an annual membership, you'll get an additional 20% off. Check it out at weaponsandwar.tv. All right, let's start with the markings on the side. They're a little bit hard to read, but we have VSS up here and made in Russia, all in Russian. Now, Before we dig into the internals, let me point out, as I said, this is the civilian version of the VSS-M, the modernized gun. And the way you can tell it's the modernized version is it has this milled top cover with a Picatinny rail on it. This one actually has a Russian red dot on it at the moment. The original guns, the original VSS, had a stamped sheet metal top cover, and it had a side rail down here on the receiver. This has a latch back here, and it's actually quite stiff, has a lot of engagement, and I suspect does a very good job of holding at zero. But the modernized version got a Picatinny rail up here. The modernized version also got this ribbed handguard instead of a smooth handguard, just sort of a vaguely visible difference. Then the differences between the civilian and military versions are twofold. First off, the military version has a selector switch back here, so it is capable of full auto fire despite being a suppressed sniper, intended to be a sniper's weapon. And secondly, the military version has a detachable shoulder stock. So there's a button back here that allows you to pull the stock off. The civilian version has a fixed stock and, of course, is semi-auto only. Now, let's dig into how this works. So to take it apart, we're going to pop the top cover all the way up. And notice this does not have a hammer. This is actually a, well, technically it does have a hammer. This is a linear hammer. When I fire, this hammer spring is going to drop that, which hits a firing pin in the bolt and fires the gun. It's not a striker per se, because just like the VZ58, this actually is working as a hammer. So that's the hammer spring. This is the main recoil spring. Magazine here, this is a 10-rounder. These are proprietary magazines for the 9x39 cartridge. That round, by the way, is essentially just 7.62x39 necked up. So there's 9x39, there's a 7.62x39, and just for comparison's sake, there's a 5.45x39. So there are your three typical Russian military cartridges. This is, by necking it up, by making the bullet larger in diameter and heavier, you get a bullet that is naturally subsonic. And of course, that is very important to have a properly suppressed weapon, because it will not create a supersonic crack. And a cartridge like one of these two, which does move supersonically, the suppressor cannot stop it from making that noise. All right, so anyway, 10-round 9x39 mag. They did also make 20 and 30-round mags. Those were more for the AS Val than the Vintorez. Now, with this open, we're going to push the recoil spring guide in and lift it up like so. I can then take out the recoil spring. It's got a little bit of a plastic buffer here at the back. Now, I need to lift the hammer spring out, and I want to be very careful with this because, first off, it's easy to get this in not quite right and have the spring kink, and this is a contained spring, but the end cap on here you can take off, and it will come off very easily. And if you let this come off under spring tension, it will fly across the room and you will absolutely never find it again. So we're going to take the tension off of that. So there's our hammer spring. Now I can pull the linear hammer back. It's going to come all the way back to the rear of the receiver and then come out. Notice that we have these two little slots in the hammer. Those are going to ride on these two, the crimped over tops of the receiver. So if you look inside here, there's no hammer as you would expect in a Kalashnikov. We just have a dropping sear like a striker fired firearm. Last bit, I'll pull the bolt all the way back. This comes back and just lifts out. Now we can take the bolt out. It's not an AK bolt. We have not one but two cam lugs back here. We have 6 locking lugs, although 2 of them are not, well, 2 of them have these grooves cut in them, and those grooves also run in the top rail right here of the receiver. So you'll notice there's one little notch there. When you're reinstalling this, you put one side in like that and drop it in right at that notch, and then you can put it in such that the bolt will slide on those 2 rails. There we go. This is a long stroke gas piston operating system. So when this is in the gun, fully forward is here. The gas block is right here, very far back. Oh, we can also rotate the gas tube, take it out. So this is the functional equivalent of the gas tube on an AK. That's going to slide right over the gas piston like that. Next up, we are going to take the suppressor off. It's easily removable for maintenance. There's just a button here. All I have to do is push that button in and rotate the suppressor 90 degrees off to the side. You can see the barrel has a series of vent holes here. That helps reduce the muzzle velocity, and it gets some of the propellant gas into this initial expansion chamber back here. These are your two rear baffles to prevent gas from leaking out the back end of the suppressor. This is actually a very short travel, very heavy spring. This, when you lock the suppressor on, clamps, this puts tension on the suppressor, which is important because your iron sights are actually on the suppressor body. And so it's that spring that ensures that your iron sights retain zero when you take the suppressor on or off. Also, worth pointing out, if you look at that suppressor, this is measured in very short increments. So this goes from 110, which is 100 meters, out to a maximum range of 42 or 420 meters. And this is in like 20 and 30 meter increments right there. So they recognize that 9x39 subsonic has a lot of drop, has a very rainbow-like trajectory, and the sight is designed to accommodate for that. Anyway, back to the gun. With the suppressor off, I can push this button down again and pull the handguard off. So there's the gas block. Really pretty simple. You've got a little bit of space here for gas to be vented into the gas piston before it starts venting into the suppressor. The handguard looks 3D printed, but it is actually not. And last but not least, we can take the baffle stack out of the gun. There's a little spring-loaded pin here. I'm going to lift that up. There we go. And then I can slide the baffles out the back of the suppressor. And there's not much to it there. That is not a complex baffle stack. That's one long flat piece of steel that had some holes punched in it and was bent into a series of angles like that. So when this is fully assembled, you have an expansion chamber here, and these holes in the barrel are going to vent gas into that expansion chamber. Then the gas is going to hit this stack of baffles. This is going to sit right there when the gun's fully assembled. There's a little step in the barrel that prevents it from going any farther back. And that's what you got. So there you go, one fully disassembled VSS Vintorez M, the civilian model. Now, since the late 2000s, these rifles have kind of fell out of use. There have been other 9x39mm small arms developed in Russia that have taken the place of the Vals and the Vintorezes. So these are showing up now in Ukraine, of course, because anything and everything is going into the fighting in Ukraine. This particular one, of course, is not a Ukrainian or Russian captured weapon. This is a commercial sale example that came out of Russia at least a few years ago. Anyway, hopefully someday I'll get a chance to do some shooting with these. It's not this one, unfortunately, but at some point. So, a big thanks to the Gendarmerie, to the IRCGN, for giving me the opportunity to take this apart and show it to you guys. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching.